Welcome in, everyone. We have a fun topic to address today, and that is whether or not American Tier 1 elements, Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, other Tier 1 units are, I guess, in Ukraine, fighting in Ukraine against the Russians. We're going to get into all that and more, but first, as always, please make sure to like and subscribe, comment with your thoughts below. It helps share the stories we're trying to share, helps give us a huge boost. I couldn't do this without all you guys. You're a much bigger part of it than I am for sure. So today's topic is a little bit interesting. The war in Ukraine's been going on for years now. It has been a brutal slugfest in the trenches. I believe Russia controls roughly about 20% of Ukrainian territory after invading in 2022. It's been nothing short of a meat grinder. It's just been absolute brutality. Now with President Trump in office, there's been movements to try to end the war. You guys can have whatever opinion you want on how you think the war should end. Right now, they have not reached an agreement, although Zelensky has signaled varying things about whether or not he's interested in negotiating, whether mineral rights could be signed over to the U.S. in return for security guarantees, what the Russians might truly want out of all this, what they're willing to give up, all of that and more. And I'm noticing some rumors spreading online on online forums about whether or not Delta Force, the British SAS, SEAL Team 6, the CIA, or other elements from that world are involved with fighting on the ground, okay? It's a crazy thing to even speculate about. Now, I do want to say that there has been some reporting that a small contingent, a tiny amount of Americans may have been over in Ukraine at some point, training, teaching these people how to use these weapon systems. And we're going to get into the contracting and what that really means more here in a little bit. But does that mean that Delta Force or SEAL Team 6 or anyone else from a Tier 1 element is over in Ukraine fighting? Well, let's get into that. The short answer, quite frankly, and I can't even believe we have to talk about this, about whether or not Delta Force operators are in Ukraine secretly fighting the Russians, if SEAL Team 6 is in Ukraine secretly fighting, the answer to that is simple, and the answer is no. There are no Tier 1 elements, at least as far as I can tell, in public reporting, or that the U.S. military has made clear in reports within the Pentagon that there's Tier 1 elements. Now, I will say this. I interviewed a member of SEAL Team 6 shortly around the time the invasion started. He speculated that he thought there could be a rescue force possibly staged in Poland, Romania, if they wanted to go in and rescue Zelensky. I then interviewed someone who'd been to Ukraine, and he actually made a comment when he got to a staging area in Poland that there were a bunch of Tier 1 operators who were there. He said that publicly. He said that on the record publicly. That's not, he didn't send it privately. So, but that's a big difference. There's a big difference between having troops staged in Poland at the beginning of the war in case they wanted to rescue Zelensky, and then all these online rumors that are going around that Delta is in Ukraine, that the SAS is in Ukraine. People are like, is it possible? Are they there? No, there's no reason for them to be there, number one. Number two, you don't send in Tier 1 operators into a meat grinder type situation. This has turned into a trench warfare style battle with drones, armor, trenches out in eastern Ukraine. So what good is a direct action unit going to do? Right? And now imagine the risk if, let's say, a helicopter got shot down or a bunch of unit members got killed, a bunch of SEAL Team 6 guys got killed. That would be an international scandal. It would be a crisis for the Trump administration or previously the Biden administration. It would be a disaster unlike anything they could imagine. It would be terrible. So there's no real upside to doing it. Having said that, there are a lot of contractors in America, and in Ukraine, and we need to understand the difference. A contractor who's being paid by the U.S. government or being paid by a defense contractor, whatever it might be, going over to Ukraine and offering aid, training, advising, assisting, but not actively involved in fighting, that's happening a lot. There's a lot of gear and money and men flowing in and out of Ukraine against the Russians. That does not mean that Delta Force is on the ground hammering Russian targets. Again, what would the purpose of that be? What would the objective? You're going to send in Delta to fight like a Russian armored division or try to break through the lines? That's not what they do. They're a scalpel. They're a direct action unit. So I don't know why this originated, if it's just people online who get curious about stuff or they want to stir the pot. We all know how that goes. There are Americans in Ukraine, a lot of them. There's a lot of Western people in Ukraine, a lot of Europeans. It is not proof, though, that we secretly sent in Black Ops teams to fight the Russians. It wouldn't make sense. They wouldn't serve any purpose whatsoever. There would be no strategic advantage to doing it. If you wanted to take out Russian armored columns, why wouldn't you just do it with airplanes, with A-10s? I mean, the United States could do it. Furthermore, Pete Hegseth and Trump have both made it clear that there's not going to be U.S. troops crossing in from Poland to save Ukraine, to fight the war for Ukraine. And you can have whatever thoughts you want about the war. The Brits have suggested that they might send troops. The French have suggested they might send troops. And if Europe wants to put together a military, a coalition, to go fight, well, that's discussions they're going to have amongst themselves. But we got to be careful with what we're sharing. And just because it's on the internet or it's on a forum where someone's asking a question does not make it real, does not make it true. There is zero proof of any kind that Delta Force is in Ukraine. Now, having said that, is it possible that the CIA has people in Ukraine? I'm sure they do. That's something that would be more in line with what they're doing. To gather intelligence, to gather information, to spy on the Russians, to spy on the Ukrainians for that matter, to see what the North Koreans are doing in Ukraine, to soak up as much information as can. That's something that they would do. That makes a lot of sense. However, it makes no sense to claim SEAL Team 6 is in Ukraine or speculating whether they are. In theory, is anything possible? Sure. Anything's possible in theory. Is it likely that SEAL Team 6, Delta Force, the British SAS are rolling through Ukraine and there's no proof, there's no photos, no one knows about it? Highly unlikely for many reasons. Number one, it would be an insane escalation up the ladder. But two, their purpose is direct action hostage rescue. That's what they do. They're the best in the world at it. That's not the situation we're seeing in eastern Ukraine right now with the fighting. There'd be very limited roles for them. Now, when you hear the guys talk about potential hostage or evacuation efforts for Zelensky, then you're like, oh, well, that might have made a lot of sense. Probably go in disguise, could even go in disguise as Ukrainian operators. But, I watched the TV show The Agency, and there's one character who's like a Delta guy running around Ukraine with some Ukrainian commandos taking out Russian targets. I don't know if that's what sparked this. I don't. It's a good show. I don't know how realistic it is. But to answer any speculation, I have seen zero proof, nor do I believe there is any proof that even exists, that Delta Force is in Ukraine. I think it's just BS that you see on the internet. There's no reason they would be there. But if you have proof and you want to send it my way, be my guest. I'm more than open to being proven wrong. But I haven't seen any proof. I'll leave it at that. Comment below if you think Delta Force or SEAL Team 6 in Ukraine. Make sure to like and subscribe. And as always, I'll catch you guys next time.